It sucks being unpopular. I visited my mum on the weekend. I stayed with her at the Gold Coast and we sat down for dinner, and straight away she's into me saying, oh, you should visit more, you should call me more and all these things. And then she says, still don't own that bloody Qantas, do you? Because Alan Joyce, like, he is not a good guy. Alan Joyce has been very unpopular lately. But the reason I tell that story is because you can make a lot of money out of buying unpopular stocks. And today what I'd like to do, my purpose today is to convince you that investing in unpopular stocks is a great way to make money. It's what we call uncomfortable opportunities. Now, to prosecute the case for that, I wanted to touch on three things. Firstly, I better be able to read this. How do you identify uncomfortable opportunities? What's a framework for thinking? Secondly, we'll talk about, are we in a new world? Or we actually think it's time for old world assets. And then finally, share with you two very unpopular stocks, two very out of favour opportunities. The ideas and the concepts you hear today, we use in the Firetrail Australian High Conviction Fund, which is a concentrated portfolio with a proven track record. But let's get into it. How do you identify uncomfortable opportunities? Well, I'd actually start with the second word first, opportunities. So you love a business to be able to make cash. This is an example of an asset. You're absolutely going to know this asset. Even if you think you've heard a lot about global small caps, I didn't know some of those, so I learned a lot of things today. You will definitely know this asset. It's typically made about $40 million a year through the cycle. It was actually founded in 1962, but it didn't make its first revenue until 1988. And what you can see, look at 2018, 19, 20 was terrible in the middle of COVID, 21 not so good either, but 2022, what a year it was. The asset we're talking about is Tom Cruise. These are his annual earnings. And I was thinking about what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. I was just amazed talking to friends, and I don't know if you've been the same. People were saying, oh, Top Gun 2, geez, the sequel's so much worse. But people came back, geez, have you seen the sequel? This is an amazing, amazing movie. Tom Cruise was heavily out of favour. Now, I was talking to people 5 years ago and saying, geez, Tom Cruise is really, he's lost it. He's broken up from his wife. He had personal issues going on. Then you had COVID. The best time to buy Tom Cruise was in 2020. Now, you can't do that. So I won't just stick with the movie stars. But what I wanted to do now is share with you some investable ideas on how you can invest in some of these uncomfortable opportunities. Now, the big one you hear about is the new world. I hear a lot about the new world. You probably do too. What does the new world mean? Well, to me, it means higher expectations for new assets being built. It means increasing sustainability. Higher interest rates are probably part of it too. But old world assets are becoming more attractive because the barriers to building new things is getting harder. Now, I wonder if you or some of your clients have tried to do an investment development. Maybe they've tried to build some residential property, commercial property, or really done anything. It's getting much harder. It's taking longer and it's getting much more expensive. There's also blue-collar constraints. So we're hearing less plumbers going into the industry, less electricians. Building new stuff is getting harder. That's the key point. So where are ways to make money? How can you make money out of this? I think some really interesting areas would include energy and commodities. It's getting much harder to build these things. But also with higher interest rates, brands and customer bases are also more valuable. Doing startups 5 years ago at very low interest rates was very easy, but now you've got a cost of money. It's going to be much harder to recreate those customer bases. Now, there's been two examples in the High Conviction Fund where investors have managed to benefit, Newcrest Mining and Origin Energy. Now, both of those are seen as old world assets, but in both cases, they received takeover bids in the past 12 months. In one case, Newcrest received a 30% takeover, Origin received a 53% premium. Now, the reason I share that with you is because the acquirers were doing the numbers. Investors are always saying, should I build it or should I buy it? Build versus buy. And our very strong view is as the barriers go up to building new things, old world assets are very, very valuable. Now, I wanted to touch on one old world asset that we think has been heavily forgotten, and it's also very unpopular. It's a company called Incitec Pivot. Now, it's not a company, it's not a household name, but you may know it. It's been very, very unpopular. You can see the stock price here in the past years gone from $4 to, I think, today it's below $3 a share. Now, there's plenty of reasons to avoid Incitec Pivot. I'll give you just a few. There's a much longer list, but it's a short format presentation. Falling fertiliser prices. In the past year, fertiliser prices have fallen 80%, and that's one of the key drivers of Incitec's earnings. Poor plant reliability. So this is a company that takes gas and turns it into fertiliser or explosives. And when the plants don't work, they don't make any money. The plants haven't been working very well. And then finally, the CEO stepped down just 2 months ago, a lot of it due to this poor plant reliability. So this is a company that is absolutely out of favour. But herein lies the opportunity. It's why it's a top 5 position in the high conviction fund today. Because these assets do have value. If you look at the split of the business today, I talked about they've got fertiliser and they've got explosives. They've got this US fertiliser business worth about $1.8 billion. They've got an Australian fertiliser business worth about $1.4 billion. And they've got an explosives business, which is what matters. You know, if you focus on the asset that does matter, $5.2 billion. Now, I think the market sort of gets that. But here's an interesting thing. This business is radically simplifying. In fact, they have sold the US fertiliser business. The number I've got there is a post-tax number. They've already got a bid for it. We've assumed they pay tax. So there's going to be $1.8 billion of cash hitting the balance sheet. Secondly, they were going to demerge Australian fertilisers. They ended up cancelling that just recently because they started receiving bids for this asset. So people seeing value in these old world assets. So what you're going to be left with is a pure play explosives business. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because you heard from Michael Bell earlier, who's a great investor. He was talking about BHP's been on a CapEx holiday. One of the things miners need to do is they need to move material. And to move material, they need a lot of ammonium nitrate, or what we call explosives. Now in 2016, this huge ammonium nitrate plant was built in WA. And what it meant was, if you look at these green bars, this means the market's oversupplied. So there's too much explosives and there's too much supply in the market. So you can see this market's been oversupplied for close to a decade. How many explosives plants have been built in Australia since 2016? 0. We've heard BHP's on a CapEx holiday. They're increasing production, but importantly, they're increasing material moved. And when we do our own supply demand, this is our work here, what we see is a very large shortfall in the amount of explosives available in the Australian market. And you might think, well, that's okay, we can probably just import it, which we can, but it's not a great solution. Explosives don't travel well. And in addition, the largest exporter globally of explosives, Russia. 49.3% of explosives come from Russia. So this is a great time to be buying into Tech Pivot. They're radically simplifying. The explosives business has gone through 10 years of underperformance, and we think it's a really great opportunity to buy an unpopular stock. The second stock I want to talk about was Domino's. I got a bit nervous when Michael Bell's getting up because he's smart, right? The smartest Queenslander I know, but he's also, he's a very good investor. Sorry, Michael. We were in Queensland yesterday. I didn't use that, but I won't bang on too much about this. But what I will say is that Domino's was a major COVID winner, as you all know. But increasingly, it went from a huge COVID winner to a big inflation loser. Inflation absolutely ravaged Domino's. I think it was one of the most impacted stocks I can see on the ASX 200 from inflation. Their food costs went up, their labour costs went up. They then tried to push prices up, but they did it in a very clunky way. I don't know if any of you have ordered Domino's sort of 6 months ago. They put on the Domino's service fee, the DSF they called it. And what it was a variable charge, like what you'd come to pay with Uber. They hadn't had one before. And customers were going on there and seeing this delivery surcharge. In some cases, it was up to $15 for your meal. So customers started leaving them, which hasn't happened very often. So Domino's was massively impacted by inflation. 7 downgrades in 2 years. It was a terrible time. But why don't we step back and look at the opportunity, because it's definitely out of favour. I did check with Michael as well. They're no longer short, so this is a safe place. But Domino's, over time, makes money when they sell more pizza. They sell more pizza by rolling out stores. And look at this chart. They've gone from 500 stores in 2010 to 3,800 today. Even in the toughest year last year, they increased their stores 6%. Why do Domino's increase stores? Well, they've got a very simple model. It's a delivery-focused model. It's small format, so it's cheap to roll them out. You can probably roll them out today in Australia for about $500,000, and they typically pay back in about 4 years. So for a franchisee, this is a great investment, and when the returns are working, stores pop up everywhere, which you've probably been seeing. It is a really rare, proven franchise. But if we step out of inflation, we believe Domino's will revert to growth. They've committed to now no more price increases based on what they can see, so it's going to be more stable for customers. And we see store growth being able to average about 7% per annum. Each store does a little bit better every day, 3% per year. And so you're talking about a business that can grow its revenue at 10% and its earnings even higher. These inflation headwinds in Domino's have created an investment opportunity. Now today I'll set out to make the case for investing in unpopular stocks, or what we call uncomfortable opportunities. We talked about Tom Cruise, but I think the key takeaway on old world assets is that they are getting more attractive in the new world. Some of these businesses that people have thrown off to the side. There's a big opportunity in a simplified Intertech pivot, where it's now a pure play explosives business set for serious growth. And also in Domino's, who went from COVID winner to inflation loser, and we think can get it back on the right track from here. Now, I know many of you, I see a lot of familiar faces, do invest alongside us in the High Conviction Fund, and we appreciate your support. If you don't, and you thought today was interesting, I really would encourage you to check out the Firetrail Australian High Conviction Fund. It's a concentrated portfolio with a proven track record. Thanks very much. I'll hand back to Mark.